Welcome to the Two Fat Guys and an Album podcast, your weekly dive into an iconic album and our search for the modern classics. In this episode, our epic 10th episode, we do the Doors' 1967 self-titled album. This is the album that released the Doors onto the musical world and began a revolution in music that would last for the next 2 decades. Join us as we break on through to this stoned, immaculate classic. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more album reviews, in-depth discussions, and music analysis from two fat guys who love talking about music no matter the genre. I am Mike Blackburn. I will be your host and narrator, and with me, as always, is the maestro of music, the siren of sound, the doctor of the diminished chord, Brek Hufnus. Welcome, maestro.
Hello.
Welcome to the 10th episode, man. Never thought we'd make it.
Feels like 100.
Right, it does. So we normally start these episodes by kind of maybe covering anything we missed or any corrections. So last time we talked about the main album was Jethro Tull's Aqualung, and the secondary album we covered under the
Beyond Classic
Rock was Jack White's No Name album.
Yes.
Did we miss anything? You got anything else?
I have a couple nuggets.
Yeah, go.
I have a couple nuggets.
Nugget away.
A couple Aqualung nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
So, every now and then we talk about mixing music and sound and all that stuff. And I was talking about the Dolby Atmos thing and mastered for iTunes and iPod Pro, all that stuff.
Yep.
From one of our episodes.
Ago,
So Aqualung actually has a 2016 Steven Wilson, this guy, remaster of the 2011 mix. But this is currently, I believe, the best sounding mix of Aqualung if you want to go back. And for everybody out there who has like any of your classic albums that you've been listening to on whatever your favorite platform is, they do get remastered fairly often, or at least once in a while. And so if you're still listening to like that original 1971 version of Aqualung, you want to look for another mix of it.
So there's always been a knock about digital music isn't as good as the album.
Right.
Do these remixes kind of start narrowing that gap a little bit? Is that what they're there for?
I think they do. I mean, I think they take advantage of better technology. Interesting that you brought that up because I was at my brother-in-law's house last night, and he just set this up. He was so happy with this. He set up his old stereo system.
Yeah.
Probably 50 years old. He's got his Jensen speakers out,
sure,
and his Sansui receiver and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And put on a copy of a YouTube CD. I have to tell you, it sounded amazing. Because I haven't listened to, music, on a stereo system in quite some time, actually. So I'm just going to say that those 50-year-old Jensen speakers, and not really audiophile speakers even back in the day. I mean, they were speakers for people who cared but didn't have a gazillion dollars.
No, they weren't magnaplaners.
Yeah, no, they weren't. But it was actually kind of cool to listen to, and it was striking.
Good deal.
Along those lines, I've discovered, because the 2016 Steven Wilson remaster of the 2011 mix of Aqualung is lossless. So one of the designations on Apple for like the quality of sound.
What's the term?
Lossless. LOSSLESS. And so over the course of time, when streaming first came out, it was pretty low quality streaming, and they've gotten much better at, just increasing bandwidth and better compressions and things like that. And so lossless is actually CD quality streaming. However, if you're using Bluetooth to listen to it, you're not getting the lossless effect because Bluetooth is not lossless. So you lose quality by listening to it via Bluetooth. So if you're listening to it on cord corded headphones
Yep.
or corded speakers or something like that, you get the full CD quality sound of that stream. But if you're listening to it even on the best Bluetooth headphones, you are not getting lossless because Bluetooth is not able to convey that
Got
much
it.
information. So yeah, it's something I came across that I thought was
pretty cool.
interesting. Did you know Jethro Tull has a Christmas album?
No,
So you might want to add that to the list. It's very jazzy and rock, and it has some of his, there's some flute playing and some classical.
So is it covering? Is it
So there's not a lot of
covers?
Not a lot. It's a lot of original sounding music. He does We Five Kings, which is We Three Kings, but in 5/4 time. He does a couple quirky cover type things, but then I think a lot of it's original, and there's actually some that are in his sort of. I think Beret was his really well-known instrumental song that was classical, but sort of rock classical. So it's interesting. You might like it.
So it's Christmas at the Renaissance Fair.
It's Christmas with Jethro Tull. Yeah, I mean some of it is, but not all of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
And it made me think, you had your little MTV phase.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you wanted to take on another programming adventure. We've talked about like Jethro Tull has a brand new album out.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked previously about John Anderson from Yes has a brand new album out. And a lot of these old-time rockers, too old to rock and roll, too young to die guys, they're still making music.
Sure.
And it doesn't really get pushed out there.
Right.
Does there need to be perhaps a Mike Blackburn programmed radio station with all the classic rock musicians, but with their new stuff that doesn't really get any recognition? Well,
we've talked. Well, leads me into my next point. Good segue talk. But we have talked on this show a little bit about some of the new music coming out. We talked about John Anderson. We poked a little at Neil Young for his re-releases of stuff that he recorded that I kind of think of closing in on money grab kind of situations. Okay. But that, so you used a term, and we've talked about a little bit, but I think it's worth having a discussion because you and I, non-podcast conversations have kind of discussed what's the cutoff or what's the limits for the main albums we are covering. And we are truly covering this week one of the Mount Rushmores of classic rock.
Wow.
In the Doors, right? In the Doors album.
Okay, some people think so.
The Doors, I think, is an icon of this classic rock. And then we have a segment, our last segment is called Beyond Classic Rock. So we're sort of acknowledging that classic rock is a thing.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to the Maestro, the siren of sound is what is classic rock and where do we cut off kind of the albums we cover under? I'm assuming if we're talking beyond classic rock that the main albums we're covering are classic rock?
Sure.
But under my definition of classic rock, several of the albums we've talked about already are not classic rock. So what is classic rock? What is classic rock to you?
So there's a correct answer to this.
Yeah.
First of all, classic rock is not a genre, I don't believe. As much as for all of our genre talk, I don't think classic rock is a genre.
Agreed.
Classic rock is radio terminology. It's programming terminology. Yeah. So, you have...
We're classic rock stations.
Classic rock stations, right. Yep. So back in the day... exactly, a radio format. Exactly the word I'm looking for. So you would have, back in the day, you might have... that we might have listened to was the Mighty Met in Chicago, WMET, and then we had 105.9 WCKG
CKG.
was a classic rock station back in the day. Currently in Chicago, you have 97.1 The Drive. I think they're the predominant classic rock station going these days. So classic rock is a radio format, and I think it's, first of all, differentiates itself from, say, oldies.
Sure.
Okay, so, you're looking at the 50s, the late 50s, early 60s.
The Chuck Berrys.
The Chuck Berrys, Little Richard, that
Yep.
sort of thing.
Mhm.
Those would be those were oldies stations.
Right.
And then...
you probably had classic rock stations. You had alternative rock stations.
Right, and all that kind of stuff.
Famously,
in the album rock.
XRT here would have been...
Yeah, maybe more of an album rock or an indie rock station.
Yeah.
Chicago's finest rock, still going strong.
Yeah.
So we're
there were top 40 stations.
Yes.
There was soft rock at some point stations. Yeah.
Yeah, so
okay.
we're talking about programmers, radio stations programming certain music and marketing it as classic rock.
But there's still a set of music that fits into that category that's differentiated from other things. Like
it's
so I guess I'm bringing this up at this episode because the Doors are really one of those premier sort of
they would appear on a classic rock radio station.
Yeah, lots of their songs kind of fit into that format.
Yeah, the Doors fit into the format of classic rock, although it doesn't describe a genre as much as a period of time, perhaps.
Well, it kind of...
There is a style of music to it, but
yes. It's I mean, if you say what is classic rock, to me, I think there is a period of time that exists there. And I would argue it starts here with this album that we're going to talk about.
Okay.
And the Doors and Zeppelin and Stones and Who and Pink Floyd are kind of those.
Yeah, those all fit
kind
in
of
with
bands, right?
Yeah, I don't think the Doors started classic rock. We could.
Yeah, that's fine. So there's an argue. So it gives me a starting point, and so it gives me kind of this is 1967, and I think that's a pretty fair starting point.
I mean.
I'll interested in your opinion on where that starts.
It's not an opinion.
Then to me the end point.
Okay.
I think is for me, anyways. So again, my
when
opinion.
You're programming your radio station, this will be the era that
it ends when I purchase music in real time. So, like Brothers in Arms, I remember going out and buying that album. That's no longer classic rock. I think it had to pre-exist for me to be classic rock, which, granted, it moves what classic rock is to. Chauncey would have a different kind of set of music that fits into. Mm-hmm. Maybe to him, Blink 182 is classic rock. I don't know.
Well, here's my argument.
Sure.
Classic rock is a radio genre. Mm-hmm. You can define classic rock by seeing what these classic rock radio stations are playing.
Sure.
Okay. So we can talk about either direction, the beginnings or the endings. I can go in either direction. But I looked at the Drive's playlist. I've got 225 songs in the Drive's playlist. So these are songs that are currently being played by Chicago's preeminent classic rock station.
So can I guess that these are probably all white guys, heavy drums, strong guitars?
Yes.
So
well, no, I mean Jimi Hendrix would be classic rock, but for the most part, yes. But that's a whole. I mean, you're leaping to a different. Discussion about music, but yes.
So it's kind of those bands. It's sort of the arena rock era,
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, you're starting.
Yeah.
You have this thing about throwing spaghetti against the wall, waiting for me to. We're talking about something completely different. Can I throw some band names out at you? Not some bands, but some songs. Okay, and you just tell me: is this classic rock or
Ooh,
not.
like a quiz.
It's
We're
a
doing
quiz. Classic rock or not.
Yeah.
I need a buzzer. And you feel free. I know you're very, you hide your opinions very. So feel free to answer honestly. Is The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel classic rock?
Yes.
Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys.
No.
For What It's Worth, Buffalo Springfield.
Yes.
Rainy Day Women, Bob Dylan.
No.
19th Nervous Breakdown, The Rolling Stones.
Yes.
I'm going to skip some of these other Rolling Stones ones just to keep it moving. I've already got a yes on 19th Nervous Breakdown. We Got to Get Out of This Place by the Animals.
Yes.
All Day and All the Night by the Kinks.
Yes.
For Your Love by the Yardbirds.
No.
Okay. House of the Rising Sun by the
Yes.
Animals. You Really Got Me by the Kinks.
Yes.
Okay. House of the Rising Sun, You Really Got Me, those 1964. That is the beginning of classic rock, even by your own admission. The other songs that I named all predate Light My Fire by the Doors. And then we can go the other direction for the later years. So I think, where is it? So again, this is the drive playlists. Okay, I'm taking songs that are actually being played on classic rock stations right now. And I don't have a million of them, but how about the Foo Fighters' Everlong?
It's definitely a rock song. I'm not sure it's a classic rock song.
Okay.
I could see where that would be a nice kind of addition to a classic rock lineup.
Okay, let me just throw out a few bands. Smashing Pumpkins, classic rock.
They're not, but I could see where they
Okay.
get played on those.
Nirvana.
Again, no, but I could see where they get played on classic rock stations.
So you're going to have probably the same answer to all these. Pearl Jam,
Yeah.
Soundgarden, and Green Day.
Yeah, same. I mean, you're talking about some different types of music, some grunge and
Yes.
some other stuff that have similar characteristics to some of the classic rocks, but are not really classic rock. But I could see where.
So the drive thinks it's classic rock, and since classic rock describes radio programming, if the drive says it's classic rock, to me it's classic rock. So the Foo Fighters, so grunge I think is widely accepted to be the end of classic rock, the last sort of genre that fits into classic rock. I think you'll hear lots of grunge. Sure. Green Day sneaks in there, I believe. Not really a grunge band, more of a post-punk band.
Agreed.
So they're, to me, which I have no problem calling them classic rock, but they do get airplay on classic rock stations. Sure. So I, through my exhaustive research, have classic rock starting with the Kinks, You Really Got Me Down in 1964, and perhaps ending with Everlong, the Foo Fighters in 1997.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's interesting. And yet, when we talk about albums to cover under the main segment of our show,
yes,
you don't necessarily agree with those time frames.
Well,
you don't like the 90 band as not.
No, that's not entirely true, and I think this is actually a really. I think we've had similar discussions off air a little bit about for this exact reason. Like, does this album fit into the classic rock segment? So, I think we get to do the Foo Fighters. I think we get to do Green Day. I think we get to do Pearl Jam. I think those do fit into the classic
Stone
rock.
Roses.
Oh, of course they do.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I've no doubts about the Stone Roses.
So back in our day when we were listening to classic rock stations, in college or whatever, do you think there was a regional flavor to them? I mean, so like on our classic rock stations, you would hear bands like Styx and REO Speedwagon.
Right, because they were more Chicago, but
Midwestern.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure those played very well on the coast.
Yeah, I don't know that. I do know music was a lot more regional back then. Now it's pretty corporate. Most of these
Sure.
radio
No, I
stations
agree.
are owned by large corporations, and they play the same music
But the Loop
everywhere.
and
Right, I think
CKG were here.
we're here in
right?
XRT as well. I
Yeah.
think they did try to feature
Regional,
local
yeah.
bands a bit more, and maybe were more also push these bands onto national stages. Like if they were able to gain a footing, say Styx, for example, they
Yeah.
sold a lot of records all
Sure.
over the place. They're not a regional band; they're a national, worldwide band. But maybe they got their footing in Chicago. Well, I was going to say Cheap Trick. They got their footing in Japan, but Live at Budokan was their big album that launched them. So yeah, I think definitely you would have some regionality, and there was
Yeah.
definitely an effort, in the day to promote local talent, and some of that local talent became nationally recognized.
So all right. So you gave some time there. You gave a time frame. You're saying like 1964 to 1997.
Right, and of course,
And-
every song recorded in that time frame is not
No, I
classic rock.
get it.
But,
There's
yeah.
a lot of yacht rock in there and other stuff you love. But there's so
I
I
can't.
so I would have to say
I just can't. Why?
poke the bear, man.
Okay.
Poke the bear.
Go on.
I'm still, I'm still comfortable with what I think classic rock is, and I sort of acknowledge that it would be different for somebody who kind of grew up in a different era. But to me, if I'm talking about, classic rock, I'm really thinking of, that.
So we need to know the
you'd-
definition of
Well,
classic
no,
rock.
but I think there's a decent argument that it all begins around Zeppelin and the Doors. They're kind of the.
I'm not sure if it begins there. I think perhaps it peaks there, but I
I
don't think
wouldn't
it
even
begins
say peaks there, but I think they're the. I can't.
I mean, if you want to
I'm
say
grasping for a term.
if you want to say they're iconic classic rock bands, I accept that.
Well, that'd be the next thing.
But they are not
they're
the start of
they're
classic
the,
rock.
the prototype isn't the right word, but they're the kind of the. No. Idiom? No, it's the.
Hippopotamus.
They're the preeminent kind of version of what everything else kind of draws around. They don't necessarily fit into all your time frames, but they work. And I do stick with the fact that I think for us, for our era, that sort of ends with the stuff before our memories, before we were out purchasing albums.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you take my definition and look at just the albums we have covered,
The Mike definition.
the show's definition I'm going to go with, and just look at
not.
the albums we covered.
Okay.
Some of them fit into classic rock. Some
Which
of them
ones
don't.
don't? I think all of our albums fit into classic rock.
So like Blonde on Blonde would predate the classic rock era
Except-
in the show's opinion, and then Dream of the Blue
but you
Turtles
said-
and Brothers in Arms would be kind of after the classic
Okay,
rock.
opinions are not facts. Classic rock is a radio genre.
Right.
and
No, but if
based
you look
on-
at the Loops playlist from 1995, I bet you Pearl Jam's not in there. So I said that classic rock changes based on the time. What is our definition of classic rock? Our era's classic rock.
I'm comfortable with the definition I gave you.
Totally okay, and I'm
Yeah.
cool with what we would think is classic rock. And
Yeah.
and you yourself put some of the other things you mentioned into other buckets.
Well, I mean, I added some in here that weren't clearly classic rock just because I wanted to see where you
Exactly.
came in with it.
Right.
There's some
Yeah,
gray
yeah.
area
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but you did say Rainy Day Women 12 and 35 is classic rock. And so the Bob Dylan album then has classic rock songs on
I
it.
thought I said it wasn't, but okay.
Yeah,
Maybe. We'll have to.
I'm not.
We'll have to
don't
throw
know.
the flag and look at the replay.
Okay. Rainy Day Women, Bob Dylan.
No. Okay.
Yeah, no, I
So-
think it's good.
So who is on the Mount Rushmore of classic
boy.
rock? You knew it was coming. You had to know it was coming. We've hung out enough over the last 45 years.
I know, but this is okay. I'm gonna do it just for the show. And again, I think go ahead and throw some comments on this because
But this is fun. This is the fun part of lists and things. Who is the top 4 classic rock
here's
bands
what I've got.
Or individual?
Here's what I've got.
Yep.
I have the Rolling Stones.
Agreed. I would put them on
I have
mine.
the Queen. I have Led Zeppelin. And then I have my 4th spot is up for grabs here. It is between the Beatles and Pink Floyd. And because I think the Beatles are, although they are a mainstay of classic rock radio, I also think of them as being a little bit poppier. And, I don't know that they fit into this bucket as easily as the other ones.
I think there's 4 of them. They're their own Mount Rushmore. I wouldn't.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't necessarily. Because I Want to Hold Your Hand is not going to show up on any classic rock station.
Right. Everything they did would not.
So
although the Beatles are my favorite band, I am willing to not put them on this particular Mount Rushmore, and instead Pink Floyd would go in that spot. So for me, Rolling Stones, Queen, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd.
I think for classic rock argument with the Beatles, you can draw a line at Sgt. Pepper's and say everything Sgt. Pepper's and beyond is classic.
Yeah, that's probably mostly true.
Yeah, which is the kind of the best compliment of anything that I've ever said. That
mostly
when you say
true.
Mostly true.
Right.
I will take that. So I wouldn't put the Beatles on there either, and I understand Queen, and I have no argument with Queen. Mm-hmm. But I would go with the Doors, Zeppelin, Stones, and Pink Floyd.
Oh, we're pretty close on that.
Yeah. The only one who's kind of the built on the backside that I have a hard time leaving off is the Who.
Right.
No,
and the Who gets. I feel like they're somewhat neglected for as big as they are.
Yeah.
They're still somehow perhaps underrated. But
and Who's Next, man? That album is.
Oh, we'll be talking about that album.
That's fantastic. All right, you got anything else, or is it time to?
I have a word of the day.
Oof.
It's going to come back later.
All right, give me it.
I'm just going to get it out of the way now because I'm not going to remember it.
Sure.
The word of the day is noir. N-O-I. I'm really into the French these days. Noir. It's noir.
Noir. All right.
N-O-I-R. You know the word. You can pronounce it however you like.
Yeah. Correctly.
A genre of fiction and film that is characterized by darkness, cynicism, and fatalism. Noir is French for black.
Yeah.
Film noir, black and white detective movies in the 40s and 50s, is predominantly what people are thinking of there.
Yeah.
So that's just a little foreshadowing. There will be some noir talk later on.
Nice. All right. So let's drop the needle then on Sidewalk.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rock. In the red corner, an album that needs no introduction. Ranked number 86 by Rolling Stone. This quadruple platinum album reached number 2 on the U.S. charts in 1967. It is considered by many to be the best debut album ever, performed by what might be the first great American rock band, fronted by Jim Morrison. This is The Doors! And in the blue corner, 2 fat guys. This is 2 fat guys and an album.
Well, we're here talking about this phenomenal album which started the classic rock era.
It didn't.
And we always kind of begin these by talking about the band. So do you want to give us a little bit about the members?
Yeah, the Doors. Of course, the front man and I think
the
person
and the
that people
so
mostly associate. But I don't think that's true. I do not think he is a one-man band in any regard. But Jim Morrison is, of course, the person we're speaking. He's obviously a massive personality and an energetic frontman and all that. But the Doors We're really a band. I mean, all the members contributed. Robbie Krieger was the guitarist, and he co-wrote many of the songs. So I didn't actually realize, because, Jim Morrison is such the poet and all that sort of thing. But Robbie Krieger was a major force in the Doors and was a major songwriter for the Doors. Also, a wonderful guitarist in his own right, number 248, according to Rolling Stone. It's pretty far down the list, but
still on the list.
Yeah, still on the list. And if you listen to Doors music and perhaps if you don't listen to the guitar, you don't think about it so much. But if you kind of zoom in on it, you realize that he's doing some very, very cool and creative things.
Well, the keyboards really kind of jump out a lot in Doors.
Ray
songs.
Manzarek is the keyboardist. He's a Chicagoan. And he's playing a Vox keyboard. And I wrote down the actual brand, and now I lost it. I want to say it's a Vox Concord or something like that. But the sound that you hear on that Doors sound is a Vox keyboard.
I heard him interviewed, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. Time. But not that long ago, on All Things Considered on NPR.
Yes, right.
And he talked about how he did some of the arrangements, and he had a keyboard in front of him, and he was kind of walking through some of the songs.
Okay.
And it's fascinating, and it really kind of pushed me back to how good of a musician all these guys were.
They were great musicians.
Yeah.
A Vox Continental organ. Sorry, I just found it.
No, that's fine.
No, but they really are, and that's why when you say Jim Morrison's the beginning and the end, I think it's a bit unfair to some amazing band members. And then the drummer John Densmore, who all of these guys defined the sound of the Doors in their own way.
Almost like the beginning of classic rock, right? I mean, that sound.
Nothing like the beginning of classic rock. So don't cheat on any of these guys.
No.
When you're listening to the Doors, take a moment and pay attention to what the keyboards are doing. And the keyboards, it's definitely a keyboard forward sound. For me, that's probably the thing I catch the most in their sound. That's most recognizable. But the drums and the guitars are doing great things. The band's name, famously, I think, derived from an Aldous Huxley quote via William Blake, the poet. The Doors of Perception was a book by Aldous Huxley in 1954. The William Blake quote, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite." By the way, William Blake, late 1700s, early 1800s.
Yeah.
So had some pretty trippy ideas even back then.
But Jim Morrison was, at heart, a poet.
Yeah, I think so.
And so you see some like spoken word stuff out of him, and his, even like in the stage performances, he's doing a lot of poetry when he's sober enough to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a great concert film of him speaking of his live performances on Netflix. The Doors Live at the Bowl 68. So a 1968 performance by the Doors. Really fascinating. Of course, we've never seen Jim Morrison live. This was... I was fascinated by it. And it was a really great performance. And he was as sober as he needed to be to get through the show. I think it was an excellent performance. Yeah. And, probably about as close as we'll ever get to seeing the Doors live.
So, to put some brackets around Jim Morrison, fabulous poet, did a lot of the lyrics for these songs. Mm-hmm. But he is the first member, second member, third member of the 27 Club.
Right.
Artist who passed away at 27.
I think Robert Johnson might be the first member of the 27 Club, but we'd have to Google that for sure. I'm not going to bet a dollar on that, but I kind of think.
So that's famously like Brian Jones from the Stones, and Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
And then it was Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison, and then kind of the newer additions would be Amy Winehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Cobain was 27.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a more of a hip hop guy, or whose name I'm going to absolutely butcher.
I don't have it.
But he's included in there. It's Jean-Michel
Basquiat.
Yeah, Basquiat.
Yes.
Yeah. So these are all people who passed away tragically at 27. I think Kurt Cobain intentionally tried to get himself in that club, but that
yes, I'm not sure if the age was a specific goal, but
yeah,
right.
But most of them, if not all, well, most of them overdosed.
Do you know like the whole astrology thing about 27?
No.
Yeah, so astrologers.
My daughter's going to be very disappointed. No.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, that I didn't know.
You didn't know
something about
well,
this.
27 that is when your Saturn returns, and when
she's going to be really disappointed. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah. And it's so in other words, when you're born, Saturn's in a certain location, and when you're 27-ish, Saturn returns to the place it was when you were born. It takes 27 years, I suppose, for Saturn to orbit.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I'm not. I just.
Keep going.
Okay. So it's in the world of astrology, it's a pivotal time. Like being 27 is a time of change in people's lives, and I think it's really interesting. I'm going to pull this out because I actually had it written down. And between the ages, according to astrology, between the ages of 27 and 30, we make conscious decisions, behave with total maturity. We know lots of very mature people of that age, and discover our purpose in life. The significant events are meant to happen. And so it's interesting, it's just interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, Casey Musgrave's recent album, Deeper Well, has a bit of a focus on this idea. And she had a lot of changes in her life, although oddly, I think she was 35 when it came out. So I'm not. So she references Saturn's return and all this. But yeah, the whole 27 club, perhaps there are some astrological reasons for that.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
So with that, Morrison died at 27. That was 1971. So we were wee lads at that point in time.
Yeah,
we're not going to concerts.
No awareness of that.
Couldn't even drive.
Right.
So there was no way for us to get there. But that's So back to kind of the band concept. So you have this great keyboards, wonderful guitars, strong drumming, and then Morrison had this powerful voice that could hold up with all of those phenomenal musicians.
Oh, he's an incredible frontman.
Yeah, so got himself in a lot of trouble over the years. With some of the antics he did during shows.
Yeah, and I think. Not to be trite, but I think some of that stuff was a call for help. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think he was in his best mindset when some of that stuff was happening. I don't think my understanding is it wasn't like a publicity stunt or even even an artistic decision, but could have been somewhat of a mental breakdown. I think he was
probably was.
I think he was really felt a lot of pressure. I think
he left the so their album that was released posthumously at this point was L.A. Woman, right? And I think during the recording of L.A. Woman, he actually left the studio,
to Paris,
moved because of issues he was having.
Yeah,
and of course never came back.
Right, I think the intention was to perhaps clean up and get things in order, but it didn't work out that way.
Didn't work out, and he died in Paris and is buried in Paris.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Doors, Hall of Fame band, 1993.
Absolutely.
And Eddie Vedder sang vocal on the induction. Don Was, who I think's name is going to come up a little bit later, actually played bass for the Doors Hall of Fame induction. Considered 43rd, one of the greatest bands of all time by Rolling Stone. First American band to accumulate 8 consecutive gold albums. And so this is my question to you. I think this is the first American rock band. The first great, like, I know you like to put them in,
Yeah.
you have this notion of classic rock, which I don't completely agree with, but I'm willing to go out on my own limb here and say that the Doors are the first great American rock band.
Wow. So
I mean, I can argue against myself if you like.
So if you would say the first great American classic rock band, I'm with you.
No, rock band. First American rock band. Do you want me to? I'm happy to argue against myself here, unless you have your.
No, well, start the argument, and
I'm going to go
if I have
with
something to pile on, I will. But,
well, if you want, here the only group.
So who would be
the only group that I think would possibly take that title would be the Beach Boys, but then you would have to decide that the Beach Boys were rock, and I don't really think of the Beach Boys as rock. If you want to call the Beach Boys rock, then they win because they predate the Doors. And when I say rock band, I'm overlooking people like Buddy Holly and the Crickets, Bill Haley and the Comets, because I don't think they're playing rock and roll. You know, they're playing
no.
a different. You know where I'm going with
So
that.
they wouldn't fall into classic rock. They're just rock. Right, I get you. I'm with you. I agree.
Words
I agree with you.
have meanings.
I do, but I think you're making my point, though.
I don't see how. So
So
no,
you're
I'm
mentioning rock bands.
No, I agree that Buddy Holly and the Crickets predate classic rock. They are right. I agree with that. And Bill Haley and the Comets are not classic rock. They're
rock and roll.
They're rock and roll, and they would in the radio format discussion, not genre format discussion. They fall into oldies. Yeah. So
no, I agree.
Yeah. So that's it. I think.
Yeah,
I'm willing, unless you can.
I just quickly glanced down at my my list of my top 100 albums, and I was kind of just blowing through that to see if there was anybody who I could argue one way or another. And no,
Say the words.
I will stand by your definition that the Doors are the first American classic rock band.
Excellent. I think I accept that. Not classic rock. Rock.
Yeah.
No, you tried to sneak that in.
Winner.
Rock band.
Win.
You haven't.
Win. Lose. Win. All right. Got it. Excellent. So let's.
Good place for somebody to drop some comments if they have some other ideas that aren't inane, like the person.
I completely agree. So we're in agreement there.
Okay.
Let's
cool.
move to. So that's the band.
Hmm?
We have sort of a monumental.
It's a big album.
Yeah.
I mean, some consider it the best debut album of all time. I know we've had that discussion before. I know there's Boston comes
would
to
probably
mind.
Be the yeah.
But a lot of people will put this right there.
Yeah.
Tough to. I mean, this is a hefty album. There's
Yeah. All right.
So I'm not willing to do the
Yeah.
I go one way or the other with it,
Yeah.
but I think it's a good argument.
No, it's
to
a good
be
argument.
made.
Sure.
The album itself, genres. It's very blues oriented, rock. There's jazz influences, and then of course, it's a psychedelic rock album. So the idea of psychedelic music, again, doesn't necessarily originate here, but it's a seminal psychedelic album.
Light My Fire was called that.
Yeah. Well, it's so oddly enough, I'm pretty sure this is the song because there's the line "couldn't get much higher," and
going to Ed Sullivan here.
Yeah, Ed Sullivan.
Right,
so he was on Ed Sullivan, and I mean, you can tell the story if you like.
No, go ahead. I mean, I don't know that much. I don't remember that much of the story.
Well, he was just on Ed Sullivan, and he was told not to sing that lyric, and they were actually supposed to change it to "Girl, we couldn't get much better" was the approved lyric.
Yeah.
And he did not change the lyric and was henceforth banned from Ed Sullivan ever again. But the funny thing about it is I think the lyric actually is not a drug reference. And believe me, there are lots of drug references.
Yeah.
But I think that specific lyric actually wasn't a drug reference. So there's a little bit of irony to that.
Girl, we couldn't get much higher.
Yeah, Johnny Cash could have sung
baby.
that song.
Yeah.
It was recorded actually in '66. It predates Sgt. Pepper, which is interesting to me. And when it was released, it was number 2. It was a U.S. number 2, and Sgt. Pepper was number 1 at the time. So this was a very successful album.
Yeah. So we say it was a 1967 album, but it was actually released on like January 4th.
Yes.
So the whole thing was done in 66.
Right. It was a very early release.
Which,
in
I mean, there's so much music happening at that time.
It's incredible.
We talked about,
and,
Dylan had an album. Yeah. Sgt. Pepper,
Yeah. And it's
I heard when this album came out that the Beatles immediately bought 10 copies. And they wanted kind of that Jim Morrison vibe to be kind of one of their personas moving forward.
Okay.
In the whole Sgt. Pepper-y kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
So,
the Beatles
cool.
were very, I guess, open-minded and experimental in their own way, of course. And,
absolutely.
And, but were influenced by their peers.
Well, everybody was making great music.
Yep.
And there's a lot of crossover
just
stuff.
Feeding one off the other.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally agree. You can hear some Dylan in what Jim Morrison is doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so,
absolutely.
So that's a little bit of Light My Fire. There's a couple other, I think, worthwhile songs to talk about. I mean, Break On Through. Were there any, do you have noted, because I don't, if there was any like single releases off the album?
Light My Fire was
I assume
was
so.
a single, and that was a U.S. one. That was a number 1 song. Jose Feliciano has a great cover of it, and
Really?
he went to U.S. 3 with that. He went to 3rd.
What year was it?
I don't know, but it was probably pretty close. It was probably 67, 68, right around there.
Right.
Back then they would release covers almost instantly. It's like you didn't have to wait 20 years long. And Light My Fire, again, was written by Robbie Krieger, not Jim Morrison. So Krieger had a really major lyrical influence. Break On Through was the other single. It topped out at 126. Yeah. So it wasn't overly popular. And those were the 2 singles. Yeah. Backdoor Man is a cover song. It's a Willie Dixon song, old Chicago blues man.
He keeps coming up.
He does. Well, Willie Dixon is a guy.
Yeah.
And so that was a Chicago blues cover. And then the end.
The End. Yeah. Which I listened to like 400 times.
Epic. And there's a lot of the spoken word things you speak of.
Beautiful Friend, The End.
Yep.
Yeah. My Only Friend, The End.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jim Morrison has a great line about that I think is really interesting. And this is from the words of Jim Morrison, okay? Every time and it goes to interpreting lyrics and interpreting songs, okay?
Yeah.
Every time I hear the end, it means something else to me. It started out as a simple goodbye song, probably just to a girl, but I see how it could be a goodbye to a kind of childhood. I really don't know. I think it's sufficiently complex and universal in its imagery that it could be almost anything you want it to be.
Oh, sure.
And I just I always find it interesting when you get the words of the author and what they think about it and whether it has a very specific meaning, but also releasing something that you might appreciate quite a bit because you like to invent meanings of things, that everybody could take their own, whatever you get out of the song, and I think in his mind is fine, and it even changes in meaning to him.
But that's not even the first time we've had that conversation, so I'm not sure why you'd put it up as derogatory, because the poets always kind of do that. Dylan does that. Morrison has done something like that more than once, and it's you think as an artist yourself, you would encourage other people to have the creativity with pulling their own meaning out of things and not be so obsessive about trying to put things in little tiny definitions the way you do.
I think it's really interesting. I think there's times when it's cool, like you want to seek the author's meaning.
Sure.
Like, what is he trying to say here? What is the meaning of this song or book or movie or anything? Like, I think sometimes the artists do have specific things in mind, and I think they should be honored. But also, it's clearly not always true, and our own reactions to music and art is should be. It's totally acceptable. Like it's part of the artistic experience.
So, speaking of books and movies,
Mhm.
I think if you're talking about the Doors, and it's our first time talking about the Doors, you have to talk about the Danny Sugarman book, No One Gets Out of Here Alive,
Mm-hmm.
which is very typical of books at this time about rock musicians and this kind of genre of musical biographies, if you would,
Mm-hmm.
that they are horribly exaggerated and crazy stories. So we
Trying
kind
to
of
sell
talked
some books.
right. Dylan's was terrible. Zeppelin has one
Mhm.
that was out in similar times. That's just
Gobbledygook.
gobbledygook. Well, there's some physically impossible things to do in the book, and the same holds true here. Then this kind of book was the basis and some other things for the Oliver Stone movie, The Doors.
Mhm.
And Oliver Stone famously never lets facts get in the way
Hey,
of
I was
his
gonna
art.
right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that anyways.
Every Oliver. So
Yeah.
Oliver Stone.
He doesn't like the truth to get in the way of a good story.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. 1991, I believe, he put out a movie called The Doors.
Yeah.
Which,
The only reason I have any awareness of it all is Meg Ryan was in it. Big
fair,
fan of Meg
fair.
Ryan
Yeah,
back
yeah,
in the
no.
day.
And I mean, there. If you don't remember this, go back and watch it. If you don't, YouTube it or something for everybody else out there. But there's a in the movie. I'm not making this up. There's nothing derogatory here. A Native American boy dies,
Mm-hmm.
and his soul leaves his body and enters Jim Morrison.
Right. Not likely to have actually have happened.
Oh, I think it's based on a historical truth. I think
Okay.
that actually probably did happen.
Okay.
But, don't believe me, go look. But
yeah.
there's Oliver Stone at his finest, and sort of a great. All of the kind
Could
of
it have
books,
been a metaphor?
Probably. I don't know, or just awful.
Right.
The movie is awful. The book is the typical exaggerated stories.
Meg Ryan was outstanding in that movie.
I'm sure. All right. Well, how about we bring this home? So at the end of this part, we always kind of talk about if you think it's a perfect album or a landmark album.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one of the Library of Congress National Recording Registry thinks it's a landmark album, and they
not going to get an argument out of me.
yeah, and they their terminology I actually like quite a bit. They enshrine it because they believe it's culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. That is sort of their criteria for
it's good.
works that belong in
I like
the
it.
Library of Congress. So they believe it's a landmark album. It's clearly a landmark album. I mean, it is the beginning of an era, just not the era you like to say. And
It totally is, yeah.
And I don't. It's a blah, blah, blah. Do you know it was described as gothic rock as early as 1967?
That's awesome.
I had to throw that
is
in.
Great.
But also, could you see it as a prog album? When people talk to me about the Doors, always, and I've never personally know where to put them because I've never really considered them to be rock, quite honestly. And I know that that's misplaced, but I believe that they're so, again, almost genreless. Like they explored territory that's so much different from other rock music at the time. But yeah, this is a great album. It's a landmark album.
They do, but I don't have a problem, So if you think about the way the show has taken to kind of describe music, where we say it falls under the umbrella of
I think
rock.
you need a T-shirt that just says "The Show."
right. Yeah, he's catching on.
Yes.
So we kind of say things as rock, and then we step it down towards kind of the next category.
Mm-hmm.
And, so much of the music at this time really has a deeper tie to the blues masters.
Yes,
You
for
know,
sure it does. And so, and this
the
album
Stones
does.
really is heavily influenced. Dylan's heavily influenced.
Yeah,
by,
well, I mean,
by
the Stones
blues.
were essentially a blues cover band
Yeah.
in their early days.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. So it falls comfortably in rock because it has those roots tied back into the blues.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue that.
Very cool. All right. I agree. It's a total landmark album. To me, it's beginning of it's the cornerstone of a changing time in music, and
Definitely.
I will leave that there.
Absolutely.
Perfect album. There's some throwaways for me on here, but
yeah,
it's
I
pretty
agree.
close.
I agree. I think the first side's pretty strong. I looked at you, and I mean they're all good songs.
Correct, yeah.
End of the Night. They're all good songs. I don't know if it's necessarily a perfect album.
I agree, and it's hard, it's very, very hard because now you're judging these songs on their counterparts on the album.
Well, that's
and-
right.
and
We ran
you're
into
com-
that with Rush. I
Right,
mean, you're just
yeah.
you have.
Yeah. So I agree. It's a Brek album, right? So it's pretty close but flawed.
I don't think that's the exact terminology we're looking for.
I like it though.
Hmm.
It's the show's term for it.
Can't wait to get you a T-shirt.
All right. We're good?
Pretty awesome, but flawed, I think is what you were looking for there.
No,
Nearly
oh.
perfect, but perhaps not quite.
Okay, but flawed. I think the show is good.
Oh,
with.
all right.
All right. Well, that wraps up side one, and now we got a live read here as we go into
Yes, we do.
side two from our sponsor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Two Fat Guys in an Album is sponsored by Deeper Connections Counseling, helping people connect to themselves, the people they love, and the world around them through individual and couples therapy for Illinois residents, both in person and online. More information at dcctherapy.com.
I was standing behind line with the guy. I don't even remember where I was.
You were staying behind a guy in line?
In line. I was standing in line behind a guy.
I gotcha.
Who was wearing a T-shirt that said, screw stigma. And it's like, there's more of us out there. Mental health is worth developing, not hiding.
Mm-hmm.
And forget about the stigma because there's so many of us out there. And I thought, one, that was very brave to wear the shirt,
Mm-hmm.
and two, extremely accurate. Don't worry about being judged or anything else. Get the help you need. Talk to people you need. Your relationships are worth it. Your marriage is worth it. And if you're struggling with something, these are great people to talk to. But don't be afraid to reach out.
Absolutely.
We got a couple more sponsors.
Hey, Two Fat Guys and an Album fans. This is Diane Blackburn, realtor with Baird & Warner and proud sponsor of this podcast. I pride myself in being committed to serve as a trusted real estate advisor for all my clients. Whether you're looking to sell, buy, rent, or lease, feel free to reach out and let's chat about how we can work together to make it happen. If you're watching, scan the QR code for my website or give me a call at 630-638-1999. See you on the flip side.
Are you someone who needs help with their Instagram or TikTok? Well, you're in luck. LR Media is here to help. Email me at laurarose2003@aol.com to get started. Let's make your social media shine.
So we flipped it over to side two. This is we talk a little bit about what we're listening, some new music stuff, some shows maybe we saw. We did see a show, but I have to start it this way. We've talked several episodes about punk and the birth of punk and
Mm-hmm.
who was the first punk band, and we've decided the first punk band
New
is
York Dolls.
the New York Dolls.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks ago now, if you're watching this, we lost one of the legends, and we lost David Johansen, who was the lead singer of the New York Dolls way back in the early beginnings,
Mm-hmm.
and was also kind of more in our era known as Buster Poindexter.
Yeah.
Hot, hot, hot.
Yes.
Right? Which was a big hit and totally different from the New York Dolls.
Well, it's super like Buster Poindexter as an entity. Like to just reinvent yourself as a whole nother person and have a complete another career,
another total career
is pretty amazing. And so I mean, he had a good run. I mean, he survived the punk era pretty well.
Yeah,
and was a very interesting artist in all of his endeavors, I think.
Yeah, and so we're throwing one back here for David Johansen, who died recently of brain cancer at the age of 75. And rock on, buddy. All right. So you got anything? Well, I guess we saw a concert recently.
We did see a show. We saw Don Was, and the Pan Detroit Ensemble.
Yeah,
it's a great name. At Space in Evanston.
Yeah,
and So just Don is a 6-time Grammy Award winner, by the way. Is a really famous producer, really highly regarded producer.
Absolutely.
Back in the 90s. In 1994, he was the producer of the year. He's a fantastic bass player. Did you know he is one half of the Wolf Brothers, performing with Bob Weir as the Wolf Brothers?
I might have known that, but that's a good.
And he's
just a phenomenal bass.
Fantastic musician. Also worked with Bonnie Raitt, Rolling Stones, the B-52s. I mean, this guy's
as a producer or as a bass player?
No, I believe as a producer.
Because I think he did a lot of session bass playing too with a lot of the big artists.
Yeah, you might be. Either way,
but then had his own band with a hit.
Was. Yes. And just a giant of a person in the music industry, and he brought a band. Dave McMurray on saxophone, Louis Resto on keyboard, who has an Oscar from working with Eminem on 8 Mile, and is a really
co-wrote "Lose Yourself."
Yes,
which so the this band was kind of a showcase of the Detroit sound and Detroit musicians, and the keyboard player, wrote with Eminem, "Lose Yourself," and I mean, he looked really out of place on stage.
He looked a little like Bernie Sanders.
With kind of the bozo hair kind of coming out the side, and no offense, you have an Oscar, and
oh no, but he's and he played the lights out. I mean, everybody on stage was just a wonderful musicians.
And I may be getting old here, but if I'm going to stand in the back of a show and see some phenomenal art going on stage, an hour is perfect.
An hour was good, right? It was a 2-show night for them.
Yeah.
So the first one only went an hour, maybe an hour 10. I think they squeezed out another song.
Yeah, they did.
So if there was one little criticism, it was a bit short. But if you can go see Don Was in the Pan Detroit Ensemble, kind of a funk, jazz,
a lot of funk.
I would point to in that direction. It's a great horn section.
They had a singer.
Stephanie Christian.
Yeah,
she could sing.
Yeah, but it was kind of I don't know, what would you describe? I mean, jazz.
Yeah, I think, again, and he even said it on stage, right? His sort of disregard for genre. I think Don agrees.
I'm glad you went to the bathroom.
I think
during
Don
that
agrees
commentary.
with me. We share the same viewpoint on this. And, I think he's just trying to write great music and not feel like I'm writing this particular type of song.
No, I've no.
But it's definitely soul. It's definitely R&B. It's definitely funk. It's definitely jazz. It has all of those elements.
I agree, and I do believe that the artists don't like to be put in genre boxes, and it's not their job to do it. It would be my other argument. It's
right. They need much smarter people than them to put them in boxes, so that they can't record albums and can't get on radio stations.
No, they can have.
No,
I
that
don't
is
think
the
radio stations
actual
are a thing
problem.
Anymore. So I don't have a problem with them disagreeing with genres. I don't think it's up. I think it's the
or being put on playlists, even if you want to
Right,
go
right.
that way.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like
The-
how many people have said, "Well, we're not going to make this album because it doesn't fit into a genre. We can't find a radio station to play this. This isn't going to fit into like when we release the indie pop playlist of the week. Your song will not be on it."
But there's so many great ways to find music, and I think even the show would be one of them, where people are people are putting stuff out and able to listen to stuff. So I think that argument may have been true during the classic rock era of '67.
the argument
to
is
80.
still true today. It's
But I don't-
absolutely
I
true
don't
today.
Really see it, and I don't think it's the
I know
artist's
you
job to
don't.
worry about.
It is because
It's
they
the opinion
can't
of
get
the show.
They
Yeah.
can't get paid because people want them to be in a specific genre or write specific types of music. It is absolutely the problem of the artist today. Next,
Agree to disagree.
Uh,
All right, so that was a show. You got a chance to see Don Was anywhere doing anything. He's totally worth it. Since we're on the show part, I saw a couple of things coming up that I would like to go see, and I think is worth talking about. They may come up later in the show, but Drive-By Truckers are doing 2 nights this summer
yeah, I wonder what that's all about.
at Fitzgeralds.
Right, I have a feeling, and I didn't have a chance to like delve into it. I have a feeling that I might even be like a charity show or something. That those tickets might be pretty expensive to see Drive-By
yeah.
Truckers in a tiny venue like that.
Well, aren't they? Now we're talking very regional, but isn't Fitzgerald doing a whole edition or
Are they? Oh, I don't
doing
know.
an outdoor space?
Well, they do. They use their outdoor space all the time in the summer. They
Yeah.
do like a really awesome July 4th summer festival. They have a couple different performance rooms. So if you're in the Chicago area or the Berwyn area, and you haven't checked out Fitzgerald's, but I'm pretty sure anybody that lives in that area knows about Fitzgerald's.
Well, I don't think either of the indoor spaces at Fitzgerald's could handle more than 400 people.
Yeah, probably at the most. It's
Yeah.
it's a
be
very
pretty
very intimate venue,
Yeah.
and it would be pretty cool to see this band.
I agree.
Yep.
Love Drive-By Truckers. The other one that I'm super stoked about is the Pixies are coming to the Salt Shed with Spoon.
Yeah, that's a nice 1-2 punch
If
there.
you don't know Spoon, listen to the song "The Fitted Shirt."
Yeah.
Spoon is wonderful. The Pixies. I'd be all over that show if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd go. Father John Misty also coming to the Salt Shed.
Oh,
I think
very cool.
just announced, and I didn't write down all the details on that one, but that would be one I'd be interested in seeing. And I think he has a really good opening act as well. But
So we're talking very regional. We're talking Chicago, but
Well,
these
I'm
these
sure
are
this
noted.
is a
They're on the
national
road,
tour,
right?
yeah.
I don't know about. I know the Pixies are. I'm not sure if Drive-By Trucker what that show's all about or what they're doing or
Yeah.
why they're playing Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other shows you want to talk about?
no, I think that's it. I think that's the show part for me.
So what are you listening to? Anything cool?
Well, going back to Don Was, the saxophone player really caught my attention in that show because I like saxophone players. Dave McMurray.
He had some years on him.
Okay, I looked. He's
Oh, boy.
he's not as old. I believe he's only like maybe 70 at the most. He might be like 65, but he's got there's some road wear there, I believe, going on.
Yeah, he was struggling a little bit.
Yeah, but he sounded amazing.
He
I mean,
did.
he sounded
He did.
great. It just, at any rate, he has an interesting album for the Deadheads out there called Grateful Dedication 1 and 2. And they're jazzy covers of the Grateful Dead.
Oh, very cool.
Yep. And what's the song? Loser, I think, has Betty Lavette singing on it, which is pretty amazing. And that's a name that I believe is going to come up
What's
a
the
little
name of that
later.
album again?
Grateful Dedication 1. There's
Grateful
2
Dedication.
albums.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
Grateful Dedication
I
and
get
then
it.
Grateful
Yeah.
Dedication 2. So if you like jazz and you like the Grateful Dead,
That'd be cool to see.
it'd be check that album out.
The guy next to the sax player, the trumpet player.
Yeah,
He had a set of lungs on him.
he could blow.
Yeah, I was.
They were all beasts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. What else do you?
Well, I've got one more. I'm liking Sam Fender these days. He's got a new single that's coming out, sort of in that indie rock, Heartland rock category.
Heartland rock.
Heartland
yeah.
rock.
Yeah,
He
no,
might
no,
have.
I'm with
You might hear a wee bit of Springsteen in him, although he's from England, but very
Heartland.
But he's very inspired. His
Midwest.
influences are Midwest
Yeah,
rock. Yeah.
That's cool.
So even though he's from England, he has that sound. The new song is "People Watching" from the album of the same name, and he hit pretty big in 2021 with songs 17 Going Under and Spit of You. These are all really good songs. I really like Sam Fender a lot. I've given the new album a partial spin, and I really like that. And just say, hey, check out Sam Fender.
So I've said before that I tend to put on an album and listen to it as I fly, and I don't like a whole lot of jumping around. I like to stick to one kind of. I have a legendary like playlist.
Okay.
That I take time and add, subtract to, curate, if you will.
Curate, yes.
But for flying, when sitting on an airplane, I like to just listen to whole albums.
Okay.
And the one that kind of caught my attention the last couple flights was a band called the Fontaines, D.C.
Yes, in one order. I'm not. Is that what it is? I DC Fontaines, but you might be correct.
Yeah. I think that's the way they're listed on this.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. And they have a album called, and I didn't write down when it was released, but and I don't even really know how to pronounce it. It's like Doggerel.
Okay, Doggerel. Doggerel.
Dogrel.
Okay.
Yep. You're
No, it's not. Let's
you're
go
the
with
maestro.
it.
Yeah. But it's just a solid album. I think they're touring this summer at some point. I don't know dates or where, but wouldn't mind checking them out. I think they'd be fun to see in person.
Yeah, they also have a single out called "It's Amazing to Be Young," which is not on the album. They just released it as a single. So if you're only listening to albums, you might like to check that single out because it's very nice as well.
New music. I got one to kind of talk about here, and the band is and I think you have played something for me before by them, but the band is Cheekface.
I guess it didn't ring a bell, but maybe.
And they have a new song out or a new album out, but the song is Living Lo-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the lo-fi reference.
Of course.
They're a Los Angeles trio, and I would describe them as oddball indie.
Sure.
So like Bowling for Soup kind of.
Yeah, I heard a little bit of They Might Be Giants as well in there, but yeah, I know where you're going with that.
So kind of fun lyrics. They have a new album called
Quirky.
Middle Spoon.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in for a little lighter music and just some fun lyrics and kind of a fun band to listen to driving down the street, Cheekface would be. I give them a thumbs up, a recommendation.
So I'm curious. Did you listen to the lo-fi version of Living Lo-Fi?
Oh boy.
No, there is one. Do you know this?
No, I did not know there was a lo-fi version of Living Lo-Fi.
Well, there is. So you'll definitely for sure want to check it out.
All right. I am the lo-fi master of it.
Well, yes. Yes, you are.
Do you have anything else?
Well, I will say you gave me a homework assignment last time to listen to Antler Hospice.
I did. I love that album.
It is they make Pink Floyd sound like a happy dance band.
They do?
Yeah. Could be the saddest album I've ever listened to in my life.
Absolutely.
And I only made it through 3 songs, quite honestly.
It gets better.
Oh, my goodness. I will say this album is absolutely high art. This is a tremendous... the songs that I listen to are amazing and just a profound expression of human existence and human emotion. And it was way too heavy for me at the time that I was listening to it. But do you like the topic is
The topic is a child in hospice, basically.
Yeah.
And kind of the the family or the
journey of going
journey
through
of
this.
it, and the highs and lows, and the kind of the release, basically.
Yeah.
Letting go and the agony that drives to. It's a horrible topic, but definitely
Great
high
music
art.
came out of it.
So just if you're not up for an entire depressing album, the song on there, Kettering, is I think beautiful, awe-inspiring, depressing, exhilarating. So if you just want to sample one,
Yeah.
and
That's
then
the
go
one.
out and have a couple beers, Kettering might be it. Yeah. But the album is Hospice
Mm-hmm.
by the Antlers, and it's a remarkable piece of art.
It sure is.
So, okay.
Yeah, I think that's...
All right, let's switch albums and flip over to side 3.
This episode of Two Fat Guys in an Album is brought to you by Smidge Films. If you're looking to bring your ideas to life with some cool cinematic work, Smidge Films has you covered. From brand stories to promos, we'll help you tell your story in a way that really sticks. Check us out and see what we can do for you.
All right, so side 3 is where we talk about an album that we might need to change the name of the segment once again, but this is called Beyond Classic Rock, and the album we're going to talk about is
We could possibly, like, depending on the album, just have a maybe it's classic rock title,
that might
or definitely not classic rock.
So, well, and it's interesting based on kind of the earlier conversation. So the album we're going to talk about is Go-Go Boots by the Drive-By Truckers. And the Drive-By Truckers is a band, we talked about them being at Fitzgerald this summer.
Yes.
Here in greater Chicagoland. But they're in my opinion, a good old-fashioned rock band. I mean, they can bring it.
Really?
Yeah. So
How odd. Because this is a country album.
yeah, kind of. Yeah. Well,
I could throw some genres out at you right away if you like.
I don't.
Goth country.
Sure.
Yeah, got cowpunk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Cowpunk.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Alt country, which is my favorite genre if you just abbreviate both words. Country soul. There's a very soul.
Yeah.
There's some Aretha Franklin in there and some Otis Redding in there in some of these songs. It explores noir-ish themes.
No, sure.
Which goes back to sort of the goth country,
Right.
which might be the most descriptive title for this music.
So if we ever get into an argument of rock, I think there's an edge of country, and maybe more than an edge, that kind of dips into the rock world.
Oh, for sure.
And whether you're talking southern rock, kind of has a country influence,
Of course
or
it does.
whatever. So it's kind of a fascinating kind of blend, and southern rock, country rock.
rock and roll in particular is
Yeah,
pretty much the merger of rhythm and blues and country music.
Sure.
So
there's some arena stuff and the whole conversation. What's a rock star? And
Yeah.
we have lots of material.
A lot
to
of
talk
fodder
about.
for
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So this is the Drive-By Truckers. I don't know. You want to say anything about the band?
you've got the primary members are Patterson Hood and Mike Cooley.
Mm-hmm.
Those are there's been a lot of lineup changes in this group through the years, but they're the constants for the most part.
And Hood is the primary lyricist. For a lot.
Yeah.
For a lot of their music, a lot of their albums.
Mm-hmm. But Cooley writes on this
sure.
album. They're both from the Shoals in northern Alabama, as in Muscle Shoals.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot to do with that.
yeah.
too.
So they come from a true heartland of music,
yeah.
and clearly they're influenced by that
You can go
whatever
on and
that
on about
connection.
Yeah.
The GoGo Boots, the title song, also features the singing and writing of their bassist, Shauna Tucker.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, one of the things I like about this album is it's almost, the album itself, it's just a bunch of characters, like a cast of characters. It's a parade of things happening in small town, southern,
small town violence,
small town, dirt and grime and all that kind of stuff. And so actually having the different songwriters and the different vocalists, almost it's an enhancement to the album. It's just like all these characters going by, and every one of them corrupt,
horrible people.
People. Did you know Jason Isbell was in the Drive-By Truckers?
Yeah, I saw that somewhere. It wasn't very long, but
right.
But
no, for
4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a 6-time Grammy Award winner now on his own. 24 Frames is probably his most famous song, but I like Jason Isbell quite a bit.
So Hood and Cooley wrote a lot of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
The bassist Tucker wrote a couple, and then there's one more kind of writer on this.
Okay. You're gonna have to give me that one.
Eddie Hinton.
Oh, okay.
Who actually is both wrote a song, and there's a song on here about him, I believe.
Okay. Yes.
He died at 51, so he's kind of a legend in that whole Shoals.
Yeah,
kind
Muscle
of area.
Shoals musician. Yes.
Right.
So Where's Eddie is the song about him. It's a wonderful song.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then he wrote Everybody Needs Love.
Okay. I'll go with you on that. And I do believe also Eddie Hinton inspired.
Yeah.
So the title track. So I do believe and Where's Eddie were both inspired by Eddie Hinton.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have the Go-Go Boots, the song itself.
Mm-hmm.
A good
country murder song.
Good country murder.
Yeah.
And murder music is a
It's
genre.
It is kind of it's definitely a genre. I mean, there's historical,
it's a weird subgenre, but yes.
Yeah, like American folk music and bluegrass and all that kind of stuff, and country music. So, yeah, we could go into that a whole nother time. But it is a country death song and it's a wonderful one.
That's
the Fireplace Poker. The Fireplace Poker is a companion piece to that.
Yeah.
Right. So there are two songs about the same thing. About a pastor murdering his...
No, it's a son murdering...
Or the son murdering
the pastor.
The pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's cheating on his wife.
Yeah. It's just a horrible...
It's yeah. And so...
Great topic.
So the Go-Go Boots version of it actually is from the point of view of the town folk. And so it's sort of gossipy and whatever. Right. And the Fireplace Poker... is allegedly the more authentic, what really happened, the true story. Right. But so those are two great companion songs, and the Go-Go Boots by itself I like quite a bit.
It's definitely I've always found this to be like a super fun album.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly thought when I originally heard it and listened to it and whatever, and we saw them at some point. I thought there was one writer and with a kind of a running theme through the entire album. And now to kind of look back and research it and find out you're talking about 4 different writers.
Yes.
It's amazing how well the whole thing kind of weaves and ties itself together.
Yeah. Well,
it's a good album as an album is kind of where I was going.
It totally is. And again, for me, all those different sounds, it makes me think of a country review, like where a different performer comes out and sings a song, then another person comes out. But all the songs fit together very nicely.
Right, and they do that in person too, where somebody steps back and somebody else kind of takes the microphone. And, yeah, it's cool. It's cool. What else? Got anything else to kind of dig into?
I mean, I like. I think those are the really big things. Pulaski song about disillusionment, small town girl moving to L.A. and finding out the people in L.A. are just as crummy as the people in Alabama.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you could go on. Every song is a story, really. Every song is a story, and I just recommend it. It was a US 35. It had some popularity. I'm not sure if it was their most popular album.
Oh, it's got to be. I would assume.
Yeah, and just leapfrogging off it a little bit, they had a recent album called Welcome to Club 13. That's the show we saw. They were, which is a whole different sound. It doesn't really. That one's got a little more rock vibe to it. I think. Yeah, it's definitely rocks a little bit harder. I think this one definitely lives pretty comfortably in some form of country music.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
twangy. It's got.
Yeah, I had very much the rockabilly sort of thing in my head with them. And,
yeah.
I can project that onto any of their albums.
You can.
I'm going with that.
But I think they have distinctive sounds quite a bit, especially with rotating personnel.
Very cool. So you recommend this?
I love this album. I recommend it. A lot of fun, a lot of great country stories. I just think.
Is this a perfect album? We've had a couple of We've had a couple of our Beyond Classic Rock albums that we've.
They really were perfect albums.
Yeah.
There's 14 songs on the album, and I'm just gonna, for all you artists out there, if you're trying to be a perfect album, maybe don't put 14 songs on it. Pick your best 10, and then you might have a perfect album sometimes.
But there's so many different kind of writers.
I like the album.
Mix up the sound quite a bit.
They do, which keeps it interesting. Like,
it does.
It's not like you're listening to the same sound over
the tone,
and over.
Singer, yeah.
Right. That's what I kind of really like about it. Every song's a little different, a little fresh. Do you think it's a perfect album?
Pretty close. I can't not necessarily think of one that I would throw out. I like. Some are stronger than others.
Right. I don't think there's
a cop. I think is
a
really good song. The Fireplace Poker is a really good song. Where's Eddie's a really good song.
Yes. Mercy Buckets, the last song, I like that quite a bit too. It's getting all the way to the 14th song and still strong.
15th, I believe.
Oh, 15 is it? I'm missing a song then.
Yeah.
But no, I would say there are a lot of good songs on this. If you think it's a perfect album, I'm probably not going to argue it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say there's probably one or two that would be skippies for me if under those certain circumstances. If all I had to do was flick my thumb on the car steering wheel.
You would not get up to lift the needle and skip a song.
I would not get up and lift the needle. I do enjoy it. I do think, since we're talking about this, a more modern way of thinking about it is like how many favorites are on this album. And or maybe that's just an additional rating system. Like if you have an album that's got 4 or 5 favorites that have made it at least to my, my favorite, 4,500 song favorite playlist. But that's also how I think of it.
Yeah. So I don't have that big of a playlist. Mine's between 100 and 150 at any given time.
Right, and you kick some out and put some in.
But 3 of these songs have been on that playlist at some point or another.
Dancin' Ricky? Dancin' Ricky's a favorite of mine.
It is and that's by the bassist. That's by a Tucker-written song.
Yeah.
No, Go-Go Boots has been on my playlist. The Fireplace Poker has been on my playlist. Used to Be a Cop was on there for a long time, which is another just awful song. But it's fun to listen to. Awful in the best sense of the word.
Yeah, I would say a minimum of 6 of these songs are in my 4,500 song playlist.
So it's pretty close.
It's an excellent album.
Yeah, it is an excellent album. So again, that's Go-Go Boots by the Drive-By Truckers. Drive-By Truckers themselves is super good.
Fun to see live. If you get a chance to see them live, they put on a good show too.
Yeah. Rockabilly, you're saying more country, but I can live with either of those.
Yeah.
All right. So let's flip over this album one more time to the back side.
All right.
And bring this thing home. Well, welcome to side 4, where we kind of wrap up the show. But there's typically a piece in side 4 where you rank the album.
Right.
So in this case, you'd be ranking the Doors.
Yes.
For the 10th show, and I think every 10th show, I will then give you my list of those 10 albums and kind of populate it.
The show will speak.
The show will finally speak. So for the record show, and this is too small to read here, but I have a highly curated list of albums, about 125 albums that I have that are mine and the show's top.
Mine are just mine.
Yours are yours.
Yes.
The Maestro music. You have, just a slew of degrees and stuff
I
that
do.
back up yours. I just have the show, so I don't. But I will share my ranking
Okay.
with us. But
Do
let's
I get
begin.
to go first?
Yeah, where do you put the Doors
Okay.
on the list of albums?
So I do freely admit this is opinion, even as the maestro speaks. This is not coming from the chair.
Right.
And I have the Doors pretty highly ranked. I think I'm also officially switching London Calling ahead of Blonde on Blonde, by the way. I'm just going to declare that before we get to the,
Sure.
for the 10th show.
Yeah.
I just can't. It's been bothering me the whole time. So,
All right.
so London Calling would be 4th on my list of the 10 albums that we've done, and Blonde on Blonde will then become 5th on my list.
All right.
This particular album, Moondance, of course, stays at the number 1 spot. So
Yep.
now my real, what do I do, is between the Doors and Aqualung at 2 and 3. Aqualung is 2, and now I have the Doors, and I feel like the Doors and Aqualung are sort of treading similar areas in landmarkness. Aqualung is an album that I listen to a lot more than the Doors. Like
Sure.
from a personal standpoint, I listen to the Aqualung a lot. My brother listened to the Doors, so that was one of his albums. So I'm very, very familiar with this album, but it wasn't like my album; it was his album. Nonetheless, I am putting the Doors at number 2 ahead of Aqualung. So there it is.
So then give us the 10.
Okay, I've
For the
Moondance.
10th show, give us the 10.
10 for 10. I have Moondance at 1. The Doors by the Doors 2. Aqualung by Jethro Tull 3. London Calling by The Clash is 4. Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan is 5. Moving Pictures is 6. Bat Out of Hell is 7. Dream of the Blue Turtles is 8. Brothers in Arms is 9 by Dire Straits. And Breakfast in America by Supertramp is 10.
Awesome.
That is my list.
Awesome. Wow.
Let's see what happens.
So the
here.
show's ranking.
Yeah.
I have so in 10th spot
Yes.
is The Dream of the Blue Turtle.
Okay.
10th.
Something has to go 10th. That's fine.
Right. And in my super curated list is just a dash. Didn't even make my top 125. You have questions about that, go back and see episode 8.
I'm sure Sting will have something to say about it.
Yeah. Number 9 is Brothers in Arms,
Okay.
ranked 83rd on my list.
And I have Brothers in Arms at 9 as well.
Number 8 is Moondance, the from the godfather of yacht rock, Van Morrison, ranked.
There may be a country murder on this set if you keep up with this.
So it did make my list, my 125 list. It
Yes.
is ranked as 70th. I've always
So
said
that's
it's a
much
top
higher
100.
than you.
It's a top
You
100.
just are
I've
poking the bear.
I've always said it's a top 100 album.
Okay.
I've never changed from that, and the show agrees. It is 8th on the show's list and 70th on my list.
Okay.
Coming in at 7 is Breakfast in America.
Okay.
64th on my list of all-time great
Mm-hmm.
albums. Brings us to 5. I didn't write these in order. 6. Number 6 is Rush's Moving Pictures.
It's where I have it, actually.
Yeah. Ranks number 50 on my list of top 125.
Okay, so we're into the top 50 now.
Yeah, we are. And then there's a bunch of them kind of all tucked together here.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5 is The Doors,
Mm-hmm.
which comes in ranked number 27 on my all-time list of
we've
albums.
just skipped to some really good albums.
Yeah. Number 4 is Bat Out of Hell, which ranks 24th on my list of top 125.
Interesting.
Number 3 is Aqualung,
Exactly where I have it.
which comes in 23rd on my list
All right.
of albums. And then the show has at number 2, Blonde on Blonde,
All right.
which I have ranked 8th on my all-time list. And the number 1 song for the show,
Moondance by Van Morrison.
London Calling by The Clash, which comes in number 5 on my personal all-time
All right. Well, we definitely covered some great albums in the
we have.
first
It's been
10
a
shows.
it's been amazing top 10. So there's the 2 top 10 lists, both the shows and the Maestros.
Yes.
And I think all we have left is some thank yous.
Okay.
So we as always are extremely grateful and thanks to our director and producer Chauncey there from Smidge Films, our PR team LR Media, our sponsors Deeper Connections Counseling. Extremely grateful to them, to Diane Blackburn from Beard and Warner, Smidge Films, LR Media. As always, please hit the like and subscribe button. You can find us on Apple and iHeart and Spotify and anywhere you find your music podcasts. You can find us, and we're always on. You can watch us, not live, but you can watch us on YouTube and anytime you want. We appreciate all the comments, the likes, the thank yous. I am Fat Guy 1.
Fat Guy 2.
We'll see you next time. Lo-fi.